Uh, Welcome to the space of Communist Party of India Marxist Central Committee. This is not a time to welcome because the time itself is not welcome. We are in a crisis. Crisis is a multidimensional crisis. It is a global crisis, and of course in India we are part of it. It is multidimensional in the sense that the present crisis of coronavirus transmission, infection, death is a part of that which we are fighting right now. But it is in the background of this overall crisis, economic crisis, a systemic crisis of capitalism, that in this background this coronavirus infection, the pandemic, was declared. And when the country and most of the countries in the world, barring China, Vietnam, Cuba, particularly the socialist country, were not prepared to face this crisis, to face this pandemic in particular. And how much the crisis, economic crisis, contributed to this coronavirus, COVID-19, is something that will come back. But there's no doubt that they are mutually fueling each other. The economic crisis fueling this pandemic, and this pandemic fueling the economic crisis further. But that's not enough. That besides that there are crises in the environment, the ecological factors, its impact on the extinctions of millions and millions of the species, and that's related to this pandemic in the sense that because of the monoclonal culture of certain animals, birds, these, that, and because of the extinction of the species, it has become easier for this virus to infect human beings. We are not going into that detail, but though it has its origin in the animal zoonotic infections, but this virus that we encounter now is something that is, we know that is a man-to-man infection. And the stage that many won't agree, but we had been telling here in Bengal particularly, that we are in the third stage, that means where community transmission has started. This is being underestimated. I think that the situation prevailing in the country now. And it is in this situation that the crisis in the management reflected because of the health infrastructure that we have. And everybody knows that the public health expenditure, the health expenditure, if you take in general, that accounts for hardly 1% to 1.2% of our gross domestic product in India. It has been declining. And having an experience as a health minister serving in the state for a decade, to attend several National Health Council meetings where all the states used to interact and exchange their information, experiences, and of course the Union Health Minister presiding over it. And the experience tells us that every time we used to resolve that it has to be doubled, but it was never doubled, it has declined. And more than 2/3 of the health expenditure in the country is out-of-pocket expenditure that we have to pay for it. And that during this crisis of neoliberalism has sharpened further because of privatization of healthcare, education, a lot of things. And now that comes to the fore when we are fighting this coronavirus epidemic, now pandemic all over the world. Now I will just have a brief mention about the other part of the multidimensional crisis besides economic, because of this biological, the environmental, the features that the world witnessed today there is also a crisis of the what you call identity now, of course, now based on religion division among the people that is being organized by interested quarters. Because of this, they are failing to manage this economy and want to divert the attention of the people to divide them basing on religion, their caste, their race, their color, and so on and so forth. And that's a crisis in the sense that adds to the problem of facing this pandemic, dividing the people on this line, blaming this or that has become a part of the game. And lastly, I must add, this is a crisis to democracy also, to the human right, because that act that is being now utilized is used to fight this pandemic is rather misused at times. It's an attack on human right and democracy. The United Nations Human Rights Commission and all of them had been reiterated from time to time, and for just reasons, I must say, that if the human rights are encroached, if the involvement of the people, the participation of people is not ensured, if people are not taken into confidence, you cannot fight a pandemic like this. You can't enforce certain things on the people. And the way sometimes the media are under threat, we know, and how lots of money are being expenditure, most of it black and some could be white, but the money is spent for advertisements and this and that, and anybody trying to come up with the truth are being threatened. And there are lots of other things, how the activities of all democratic activities that are necessary to fight this battle, those are being encroached. So it is in this background that the WHO has rightly asked, and that we all agree that no country has divided in that sense, but they used to divide, but they have probably come to recognize this, that the 4 keywords to fight this COVID-19. First is test, and test. You have to test, isolate, and then track the cases infected, the positive cases, or even those who are exposed to COVID positive. Then finally, of course, treatment. But none of them are being seriously followed. And this lockdown, everybody knows, was announced without any preparation, though there was enough ground for preparation except for Kerala, which was prepared from the beginning. For the country and the states, including our state, the West Bengal, they are here, I would say that none of them were prepared. The government of India itself was not prepared, and they violated all the principles. Now they are talking about the social distancing. Is the word that is something that I would never use. Is of course we need physical distancing, but social distancing is something that we have for centuries in the countries, and it is the social solidarity to fight against this social distancing. But of course, maintaining physical distancing, and all of us know, I am not going to reiterate those things, that how Prime Minister himself made a huge gathering to welcome the President of the United States, Mr. Trump. And many other examples are there. I'm not going into that, but and how they killed time simply to topple the Karnataka government. For that reason, the Prime Minister had taken time, and the same thing happened in other states, and including West Bengal at the same time. But what remains abysmal failure even now is what I said is testing. Testing is something that is far from satisfactory. The number of persons tested in terms of percentage of our population is abysmally low compared to many countries in the east or west. And Bengal is one of the lowest. And the reason is, one reason, of course, they say supply of kits and this and that. Yes, that's the reason. But why can't the government go for procurement? Why it was not prepared? And why now even the supply demand, there's a great mismatch between what is needed for the situation and what is being supplied. But for West Bengal, our experience is a bit different in the sense when we had enough of kits, at least. And we have on the level 4 laboratory, that is, of course, during the left front time, this was established, level 3 laboratory, the NICET, that ICMR lab, we have only Pune that we have level 4 laboratory, but the having that level 3 laboratory, having a testing capacity no less than 100 per day, you are given 7-8 samples a day. There is no reason. Yes, there could be intention, but there is no reason. And of course, I must say that after it came out in the media, and we had been talking about it since long, in the all-party meeting convened by the Chief Minister, we said test, test, test. Surveillance, that is a very important thing. The mass surveillance, utilizing our grassroots health workers in the rural area, those who work from the sub-centers, health sub-centers, the ANMs, the other health workers. So the ICDS workers, the ASA, all these people could have been involved in a bigger way for surveillance, but in lack of direction, that this was not done. And even if when it started, they were not provided with the personal protective equipment, PPE, the mask, gloves, whatever you need for this, for surveillance. So surveillance, testing, miserably failing. And about the rapid kit, they made what the government of India did is supplying the kits, then withdrawing it, made a mess of it. And for regions, though it's coming up in the newspaper media, but it has to be ascertained. The responsibility has to be fixed, and who are responsible for this. So the advantage of rapid kit testing could not be fully utilized. So some states, out of their own initiative, could do it. The center has failed, and so also our here in state of West Bengal, that we could not take the advantage of rapid kit. And I'm not what is the benefit of it, and what are the limitations of the rapid kit and all that everybody know. So so after this, the second problem is that after the test, the isolation could be, yes, home quarantine, somebody suspect case, but it's not positive. You can watch and monitor, regularly trace, and somebody who is exposed to a COVID positive patient, maybe in home quarantine. But the system that we have in the country and the discipline, the ruling parties themselves are, exhibited, is not congenial for depending solely on home isolation. Anyhow, but that quarantine facilities are also limited. Many countries, we have repeatedly said that they opened up their stadiums the school, college buildings, any community buildings, they are now closed as such. There is no match being played, or the community buildings are not being utilized now. The school, college buildings, they are closed. So they could have been, they are having big campuses, and they could have utilized this for, for quarantine. So this thing, and finally the as I said, that testing, surveillance, then comes tracing, then all that, and treatment. And we ask for a treatment protocol, and there is nothing secret about it. You must be able to tell that this is the protocol that we are following, because we can understand that what is happening. We don't want to go into that detail, but there are a lot of debates about the protocol. I am not going into it. And the worst thing that happened to West Bengal is the reporting on number of deaths. Say, for example, the last figure that we have in Bengal is that is 144 deaths which has COVID positive in testing. But the government keep on saying that 50% of it, roughly, so 72, this is death due to COVID. The other 72, they are COVID positive, they say, but the death is because of the comorbidities. Well, there is a provision for making records. The patient have any comorbidities and all that. That is necessary for many other studies that will be important in future. There are a lot of materials necessary for that. But to say that the death because the patient had certain comorbidities, that is the main cause of the death, that they must not be included in the COVID death, is nonsense. That we cannot agree with this. His argument is very simple. That it does not require a lot of academic studies and science to know that if somebody had a comorbidity, he would not have died unless he would have been infected with this, what this infection, the coronavirus. He would have lived longer. Elderly people like us, so those were more prone to get the infection, and maybe for going beyond infection, mortality would be higher among these people. So, does it mean that even without COVID, these people would have died? This certainly doesn't mean. If a patient who has died during this period and the treatment is COVID positive, must be taken as COVID death. That's the source of confusion that it remains. And the figures they release from time to time. And when our party organ here, Ganashakti Daily, that published the real figures and all that, the government has threatened them with a letter or something. But anyhow, a repeating reply was probably given, and now we are able to report from time to time what is the reality. But government reporting has also, I must say, improved. They formed a committee, an expert committee for auditing death. I have never heard of this. I don't know if any other state would have it, to form a separate expert committee sitting over. And the right to write a death certificate, right or responsibility of a death certificate of a physician under whose the patient was under treatment is something that cannot be denied, and you cannot sit upon the judgment on what the treating physician has written. Anyhow, but there are many expert committees. There are global and local expert committees formed here in this state. But I would not say that nothing has improved because of the consistent pressure that the demand that was raising its bias all over the state, and it came out in the media and all that. That has improved. Now you get a better figure. But if you go in terms of percentage of death of those who were attacked by this virus, is the highest in West Bengal. You see, because is foolish. Why? Because if you have more of tests, you say increase it tenfold, the percentage of death will come down by itself, because 80% of corona positive patients having infection, they may not need any treatment. You may take 1-2 paracetamol tablets and may not require anything. And even lesser than 20, much lesser than 20% will require admission, and those having serious symptoms. So I'm not going into those technical details, but the issue remains that in our country, the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister, sometimes in some states, they think they can talk for anybody or everybody, right from economist to an engineer to on electronics or medical science. They would say the final word, and that is in the name of this Epidemic Act that was enacted during colonial regime. Of course, they have made certain amendments, but like many other things, the basic structures remain. So this, I'm not going beyond this, but the crisis it has resulted in is palpably felt all over the country, and West Bengal is no exception. Now, when we started with this, before this pandemic started, when it started with the recession, with the, big industries to start with, including the automobile sector, a lot of real estate sector and all that, the steel. Then what was not foreseen but very evident now is the crisis in the MSME sector, medium, small, micro enterprises. The medium, small, micro enterprises, I think there would be around 63 million of such enterprises in our country. I remember that the share of West Bengal will be around 14% of this all India figure of this, and this MSME sector was under crisis, but it was overlooked. Nobody bothered. Never bothered about the people employed in this. More than 110 million people are employed in this sector, and it's very important to remember, out of this, say, 63 million, 6.3 crores of MSME sectors, and over 90%, 99%, over 99% are micro enterprises. And if you go to the social composition of these workers, of say over 110 millions of workers employed in this, I'm not going to its share in the GDP, to its share in the export and all that. Very impressive figure has come out. So, here, if you go into the social composition, almost 2/3 of these workers belong to SC, ST, and OBC. So, minority, including, I can say safely that it could be 80% of these workers belong to these people who are not only economically deprived but socially discriminated and deprived, a special feature that must be kept in mind for Indian situation in particular, for historical reasons. And therefore, these people had been were cast out before this pandemic started, but now there has been another survey. If I remember correctly, it was Kotak Mahindra made this survey that only 7% of the entrepreneurs are now able to say that we can sustain for hardly another 3 months. That means 93% are not in a position to run this, and only 7% could hardly run these micro enterprises for another 3 months. That was at the time of survey. So, say another 2 months roughly. So that is the situation. That's the situation in employment. So the 14 crores of employment that, those people who are turned unemployed during this pandemic is a figure, but I believe that it does not capture other things, the rural unemployment and many other things. And so that's the serious most crisis that we had in the life and livelihood of the working people. This number is on the rise. It is globally on the rise. If we take into the rural situation, if you see that going to the rural situation, I can't say about the country as a whole, but whatever I read from the reports and the articles published and all that, there are strong reasons to believe that this is an unforeseen crisis, a rural distress that I must say I have never seen in my life. Having brought up and a person from the rural area, this is the worst crisis in the the worst rural distress that we have ever seen during our lifetime. There are many reasons because of the rapid depeasantization, proletarianization of the peasantry, and because of these other services that they have shifted to, mostly in the service sector, informal sectors, and which is now under a crisis. And added to that is that the government took a lot of time, Union government. Kerala government is an exception because it declared that the harvesting, etc., the farming facilities, those has to be recognized as essential act. But our state government or the central government took a lot of time to understand that it is an essential work. So how the harvesting has to be done, what is to be done about the procurement, what about the price, and what about the employment, rural employment, how this MNREGA fund, that remain unutilized and no work was done, and those are things that all of us know. But all this added to this crisis in the rural area to intensify. Take for example, for Bengal, it grows roughly more than half of the potato that the country produces. And of course, I would say after potato harvesting this year, the price was somehow manageable. But I can't say it about the other crops, crisis in other crops, and even those who had some money after the potato harvesting have nothing now, is penniless now, and the peasantry, the farmers, be it middle class, middle farmer, maybe poor peasantry, not to talk about agricultural laborers, the middle peasantry and that upper strata of the peasantry, that class is now depending upon taking loan on mortgage. Even those who take mortgage have now refused to take mortgage because they can't give money. If you keep your golden ornaments or something with them, they won't accept it because they don't have money for itself. You see, imagine this type of distress is the majority of our population is, going on starvation or semi-starvation or whatever. It's something, a type of distress, particularly in the rural area, and of course among the unorganized workers. The migrant workers crisis is the worst of that because their number has not been ever estimated properly. We believe that in India it could be, is no less than 90 millions. 90 millions, it could be 100 millions, 10 crores or so, but I don't know, my government doesn't have any figure itself. Bengal, we have an estimate is roughly will be to 12% of these migrant workers, roughly. Probably we are coming next to Bihar, which has increased manifold during the last decade in particular, because of the agrarian distress that has become almost a permanent. The farmer suicide is something that was unheard of a decade back, but during the last decade, this has further intensified. So, given that the people, but there is a rough calculation, I think that is easier to remember is this, what I depend upon is think that 1 out of 6 Indian is a migrant. If you have a member of 6 families, then one of your family member must be residing. I am not saying that all of them are migrant workers in the sense we use the workers, but they are working for something, maybe teaching, maybe something is research, something, maybe some other country, some other state, maybe a professional. But of course 95% of them is around the working people, the migrant worker, and they are in the greatest problem because most of them, they had no money because the work has stopped and they live on daily wages mostly. So they had no money and they had the great problem. Even the place where they have to stay, used to stay, mostly in sort of bunkers and all these things, they don't have, the landowner won't, the house owner won't allow him without the rent. So, though no place to stay, nothing to eat, no money in their pocket, not to talk of sending something to their families at the home. That is the situation that we have seen. And this happened because of the utter callousness of the government. The state government here particularly, I understand, and I see other governments also in some other states. So, this without any preparation, anything, had they been given 3-4 days time before this lockdown started, then it was impossible, they would have gone back to home. Now we see the tragedy. For example, they took a long time to decide whether railway can provide special trains. And then came the second extension of this lockdown, and there was some announcement. Then they didn't depend upon the trains only. They said also buses, other things. And how are you going to make ensure physical distancing in buses? I have seen buses carrying patients, carrying people, the migrant workers, loaded from the top to the bottom, right on the top of it. So, how is that? Why not trains? The Indian Railways have enough of capacity to run some special trains to take these migrant workers back to their home. Those who want to. Now you see that even if they said about the trains, but the fare remain unsettled. Those don't have money to eat. How come to they can pay for this fare, and you charge extra for this? It is extortion that they have to pay. Then they ask for filling of forms and this and that, and that I understand that to fill up a form, to give the photocopy of an ID card, this, that you require, costs 200 rupees itself. Then you ask for train fare. Now ultimately this, I don't know it is a government decision or not, because I have not seen a circular like that, but the BJP spokesperson said that, no, who said that we won't share anything? The center will share 75%, 85%, and the state government has to share 15%. Except for Kerala, nobody did. I mean, some other state have done something, but it is the only state where the migrant workers were not, did not feel that they are migrant workers. They were treated as guest workers, and all the provisions for their staying, for their health, facilities, testing and other facilities, and of course food and all that, the way they are treated is the best in the country, best and uncomparable in the country. I don't know, I don't go into that experience of the Kerala model. I am not the right person to say that, but I must say that one must understand the limitation of the other state and the country itself is that Kerala, going by the health indicators, social indicators and many other indicators, is comparable to developed countries in the world, and no other state can match it. That is historical reasons, and since long, particularly since 1957 EMS ministry, that the the Kerala development model is something that I think is not replicable in any state, even if you like now. But definitely there are a lot of things that we can learn from them. And of course, the countries, other countries, including the developed countries, are talking about Kerala model now. The migrant worker problem has resurfaced. The fact has resurfaced from the way the migrant workers are handled. Now you see that Karnataka government for itself, yesterday the first phone call I received in the morning early is that the Karnataka Chief Minister, the government, the Chief Minister is busy in having rounds of discussion with the real estate owners and that industry and other industry. And probably they have advised that no, these migrant workers should not be allowed to leave Karnataka, which is difficult. Yes, of course, there are certain, I remember that Bangalore East, we have a lot of migrant workers who handle with these garbage and all that. And of course, Bangalore civic bodies, they won't be capable to give the services without them. They are indispensable. And they are not much willing to come back also, as I'm told. But the millions of other workers there, what are you going to do about it? And they suddenly cancelled all the trains that were booked for them. And after the railway has taken all initiative to run 10 trains from Bangalore to different states, including ours, and but they were cancelled. And see also this, now whom do I blame? The BJP runs the central government, BJP runs the Karnataka government, 85% or 15% is that is to be shared by the state and the central government. The policy is, the circular is issued by the central government. And I said that time, I reiterate that it's the business of the central government. The circular, the way it was given, is something washing your hand totally of this responsibility, saying that states should contact each other and ask the railway and arrange for their transport. This is not the way to do that. What for the center exists? What for there is a provision of interstate council, and particularly for health, you have a central health council. So you have a role to coordinate among the states, and because the railways that is in your hand, and it failed, it miserably failed. Our state government is something that I learned yesterday only, that they had not taken interest for migration of the migrant workers back to their home. Even it has so happened that those who have worked for hundreds of miles entered into the state were chased by the police. And of course, the local people came to their rescue and give them shelter and food and all that. But now, for reasons I don't know, but one can, guess, is that the government of India, the BJP ruled government, and here the government of West Bengal, they are not interested in bringing them back. Apparently, they had been whispering, there is a whispering campaign that, that will increase our risk manifold. But if I remember Kerala report rightly, that almost 100% of the migrant workers they were tested were negative. They were not positive. So that's not the reason. And here again, a fear psychosis is being created. It's a whispering campaign. No, migrant workers are dangerous and etc. They can't be allowed. Now, what the government has to do is they're spending a lot of money for, what Chief Minister or Prime Minister is saying, but they don't say about the people, about the steps that has to be taken. Yes, they have to be tested, the train sanitation, the physical distancing, etc. that has to be maintained. And when you get down, then again you test them and send them to quarantine. And there is a confusion about that also, that the government is saying now that they can go back to home after preliminary screening. Preliminary screening, yes, they can go back to home, but it's quite risky. Why don't you? We have a lot of buildings, as I said, that even in the rural area, that the school, college buildings and all that, other community buildings, where they can stay safely for a quarantine period, maybe 2 weeks or so, and testing must continue. In the meantime, they must be given food, shelter, and the health service, whatever minimal health service is necessary, and of course the testing and tracing and all that has to be done. So the Kerala train that has to come today, I mean start today or yesterday, that anyhow, that, and some train from Maharashtra to come to Bengal, the state government has not taken any interest. They have not declared whether they will be here for the 15% of the share that has been talked about, and the trade unions here and the other mass organizations, they have unilaterally decided and declared that if you are not able to pay 15%, we will arrange for their payment. We will see how much we can contribute. We will go to the people and manage it. So I think that is one of the big problem that we have now. Of course, this problem inside the state is getting further, the crisis is getting intensified, and is a food crisis, the biggest crisis that we face in the urban or the countryside as well. And that is because whatever was committed by the Union Finance Minister in that package announced, some more than 1 lakh and 1.25 lakh of crores of rupees or something, but I remember that press conference saying that we will give the food grains so much, we must give pulses, and according to the practices, I mean the tests that vary from state to states, all that. Where is that food grain? Where is that pulses? What is happening to we said about you don't go for the cards, and those who are having cards and those who don't have ration cards. I mean, it should be a universal public distribution system operating now. If it is not a matter of ration card, what happens when a calamity happens? What happens when there is a flood, when there is a cyclone? There is gratuitous relief. You have to give food for everybody. You don't bother about for a card. What is wrong in it? That requires will. What is necessary is political will. That what the government lacks, both the state government and the central government. And announcing 5 kilo or 10 kilo, and then the state government announcing 5 kilo, this, that. We are demanded for, that 35 kilo gram of food grains. What we do with this food grain? They want to probably, intend to go for procurement for these rabi crops. 4 million tons, 40 million tons will be added to the stock. Where do they keep the grains? What for? For conversion into ethanol and all that, this nonsense they are speaking about. So, whether it is the state government, and there is always here we have a special problem, that the quarrel that the Prime Minister and the Chief Minister, the Governor, Prime Minister, Chief Minister don't go to much of argument, but they have a fair relation. But the Governor and the Chief Minister and the central government and the state government, no, they are not giving us kits, they are not giving us PPEs, they are not giving us food grains and all that. Is something we are tired about. It's this blame game, blaming each other, but having excellent relations otherwise. But the problem is that Kerala had shown how to handle the central government, how to handle the opposition, how to take everybody together, take everybody into confidence. Now what happens in Bengal is that apparently it appears the central government sometimes does not take the state into confidence, state government into confidence. At least from one letter of Chief Minister, I thought that it could be the fact. Anyhow, when they said the central team for the first time, interministerial team, their people, they came. So the center does not take state into confidence, and both the central government and state government, they do not take people into confidence. That is the people must know. If you don't know the district-wise figures, if you don't get from the district the block-wise and municipal area-wise figures, and for big corporations like Kolkata, if you don't have ward-wise figures of testing, number of positive, negative, all that, how can share your concern with the people? You can't enforce it by simply saying about the Epidemic Act, and that is not the way. That what we used to do. We had 3-4 epidemics, and I'm not going to. I think they are far better managed in our time. I would not say that we had very good hospitals, very equipped medical colleges and all that. We tried to increase their number to produce more doctors. That was necessary. And but the public health, the epidemiological management platform, the system that we have built up has been demolished totally, because all the best doing performing people, they has been removed from their offices. I am not taking this or that body's name, but it's very important in managing a pandemic like this, and the way it has to be managed. So, and the way it has to be reported, the way the people has to be taken into confidence, the way the people's support has to be mobilized, their participation has to be ensured, and that gives you the strength to fight this pandemic. So that makes the entire thing, the mess of it. But I said that if the crisis, particularly in supply of the ration, the essential commodities, that is not restored, and the additional food grain that has been, whatever the government has even, whatever we have demanded is something that is essential and it is easy to do. It won't cost anything. And but whatever even the central or state government has assured is not reaching. Not even rices, the quality of rices is another thing, and there is pilferaging of rice. Both the ruling party in the center and the ruling party in the state, they are cadres in some places, not in all places, but in some places they are involved. Then they had been arrested. The government was supposed to arrest them. So that has to be ensured. That is not happening now. This is the top priority, because once the starvation, the starving millions, we reach them to our, whatever, even the migrant workers in the other states, we reached our party. The trade unions consulted their colleagues there, all the mass from the students, youth, women, they had multiple helplines, hundreds of even local helpline. You have somebody calls you that you have a problem, require a medicine or a blood or something, they can help it. But the government didn't have a helpline for long. I'm talking about the state government, not even the central government in that way. Public, helpline to reach the people, to where the people can register a complaint or something like that. But from that, whatever we gathered from the people who got stranded, locked down in other states, we could reach them. I should say that we could reach almost 1 million of them. Not us, not only Bengal, but the trade unions there, the other mass organizations there are many other organizations. But in some states, of course, the government did help to some extent. And Kerala, I said, is not comparable to any other state. So they did all that. We didn't have to bother about Kerala. We had to bother more about our government than the Kerala government to bringing back these people, the migrant people, workers. So, but we could reach there. And we could reach the poorest 10%. This I can claim. Poorest 10% of our state population. Those who don't have ration card even. They don't have a place to stay. Anyhow, I'm not going into those details. So all the mass organizations, we have a lot of community chickens now run under our initiative. But that's not enough. we have here other helplines even for health consultations. It's not us, but there are other organizations that are doing it. You can consult somebody for migrant worker, another helpline for say somebody ill or something, some consultation in telemedicine mode. All those that we are being able to do here with the people initiative. I am not talking about our party, but in the general by the people initiative from. But the government is failing to, to respond in the way it was necessary and what little was expected from them. But you should end by saying that we firmly believe that people make the history. It is at this historical juncture and a crisis, a multidimensional crisis that we have in the country and world over. Is the battle ahead, we know, is getting tougher. And what is the potential that we have seen from our experience in handling this crisis in the last 2-3 months in particular is that the people can undo things. They definitely make history, and we strongly believe, we have strong confidence in the people, and of course millions of our comrades working. There are other people other than our party, they are working all over the country, and the people in general, we are confident that they will face this crisis. They will definitely encounter the offensive let loose on them, and they will come out victorious. We have all the confidence on the people. We shall overcome. Thank you.